Hey, welcome to Creative Block. We're your host, Gene.
And V, we interview people in creative industry about their life, work, and hobbies while we doodle jam.
We ask people on Twitter if they have specific topics they want us to discuss, as well as some drawing prompts.
And today with us, we have Aaron Austin. Hi!
Hi,
Hello.
Aaron.
Hi. Happy
Aaron,
to be here.
I don't care. Aaron,
Ah!
tell us who you are
Thank
and
you.
what you do.
I'm
Really coming in
Aaron.
hot on this one. We're good friends. Wewe're good friends. This is not.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not just being an asshole.
we're mortal enemies.
Yeah, we're
This will be a fun
nemesis.
episode. My name is Aaron Austin. I work in animation as a storyboard artist. I've been working in the industry for like 8 years now.
Yeah.
But I also do comics for my own sanity on the side.
hmm
And yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've worn a lot of hats. You've done a lot of things, and you have a very interesting career, but also life story that we'd love to unpack a little bit, as much as you're willing to tell us. But we always start
oh,
with
they're all my secrets.
all your secrets. We want to know everything.
That's the end of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell us how you got your start drawing.
Start drawing. Oh, we're going
Yeah,
back.
we're going back, baby.
Going back. I've been drawing my whole life, I guess. Ever since I was like 2 years old. It was one of those things that like my mom would always say, like, "Oh yeah, he's been drawing his whole life ever since he was two."
hmm
So that's I give the same spiel too.
Mm.
There's yeah, I've always been drawing since I could, I guess. Um,
And did
and
you, I guess, like, did you know that, like, drawing was like a hobby or something that could be maybe a job? Or were you just like, no, this is just for fun?
yeah, I like growing up as a kid, it was just for fun. I didn't really think about career much
Mm.
in my youth until like high school. I was like, oh, I think I'd like to do something art related as a job. And I had like no understanding of what any artistic industry was. So I was like, I want to design CD covers for like rock bands. Like that was my like
It's a good
initial
dream.
projection. But I didn't. I'm like, what kind of job is that? Like, is that graphic design? Like, who does that? Um, I had no idea. And then one time in high school, I had like an art class, and some person came from some art school and like gave a presentation on different art careers, and they talked about animation and I think specifically video games. But then I was like, oh, animation, like, yeah, I would love to do that. And then that was like junior year of high school, and then since then I've been on that track.
It's funny how I feel like a lot of people that we talk to, they all kind of like stumble onto the idea that you can work in animation, because I think
Yeah.
our generation specifically, like we might have been the last that didn't have immediate access to a lot of this stuff, and so
Mhm.
it still felt very like far removed, and like I don't like people do this. Like I don't remember
Yeah.
who it was, but somebody was like, "Oh, that's right. Like people have to make this," and that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
thing for them. What are some of your earliest artistic projects that you can remember?
Whoa. uh
I just blew your mind.
yeah, I was like, at the age of 2, I was working on a drawing of a snake, and that was my earliest.
What were you feeling when you were working on that snake? What were you trying to
I was
say
really
with
trying to
that?
capture, the wiggle of the snake, the slither of the snake.
I love that snakes have been a thing for your whole life because you draw yourself as like a lizard.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I think I don't know when that happened, but I always kind of considered myself reptilian, and so it's
Hmm.
like,
Is this like a hint that you're a reptile
I
person? You're
think,
like,
yeah, yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it funny how I'm
That's
like draw
a
myself as a reptile? Isn't it
Isn't
funny?
that so crazy? Has anyone picked up on that yet? Um, yeah, I think one time like someone, um, like I have like pretty thin lips, and someone said that called them lizard lips once, and I was like,
Oh,
oh yeah, I'm gonna be a lizard now from now on.
no, all right.
So,
Lizards are the best. Yeah.
but I mean, growing up, I just drew like I had like my own. in terms of like artistic projects, when I was a kid, I had a friend and we would draw our own. We had like a Pokemon Digimon, like our own version of it that we called Crystal Creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And we had this whole story we wrote with it, and we had drawn this whole like Pokédex, like a sketchbook full of all these crystal creatures. And so yeah, and then unfortunately abandoned that at the age of like 10. So you will not be seeing a Crystal Creatures.
Didn't become a huge empire.
It's not become a franchise, no. But I
You
think
have
I've
to draw
always,
one. You have to draw one right now.
yeah.
Crystal creature.
Oh my God. They were also, we followed the Digimon rule
Uh-huh.
of like how all the Digimon end with Mon, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Um, but we were like, oh, but we'll use Crystal. So they all ended in Stole, which is like not a
Okay.
good suffix for. So there was like one that was like, it was called like Spike Stole. I wonder if I can.
Okay.
It's not so bad.
But then there was like, it was just really boring stuff like Flower Stole, like uh probably Lizard Stole. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
just kind of like, I don't know, it's a gross way to end a word.
Yeah, not great. What a
But
stupid
he
9-year-old Aaron should have known better.
yeah, he looked a little bit, I think he had like a mohawk. I'm gonna try and draw it also as bad as it looked back then.
I like how this is a shared experience though, because I also had my own like trading cards, and I don't think I really did. No, I definitely did Pokemon too. I think that was just such a like fun thing to like come up with your own version of that.
Yeah.
I would bet that a lot of artists had a moment where they send us your Pokemon, everybody. I want to hear everybody's all the listeners' fake Pokemon that they came up with.
Yeah. Yeah, it was you know, it was a fun time. Anyways,
Yeah.
here's Spike Stole.
Oh, that's great.
And that's
Kind of
He's
stepping on my
great.
eyeball a little bit. On my
well, like
Amphibia Sona.
If y'all are listening on
oh
Spotify
wait.
or iTunes, definitely check out the YouTube video to see
Yeah.
Spike Stall.
Spike Stone. Oh, it kind of looks like you,
Um,
Aaron.
yeah, you know, I kept some of that energy with me always.
If you
Okay.
see me drawing you as Spike Stole, but with like a big diaper.
Oh my God. Oh,
Got a
I
big
love
old,
it.
big old diaper.
Ooh, put a little heart right there.
Yeah, you were saying how like you also did collectibles, like Gene. You were, I mean,
Yeah,
it's funny too because
yeah.
I did that. I didn't do it with the Pokemon, but I did draw like a lot of characters that were all part of a like. You know what? I was doing NFTs when I was a child on paper. That was literally what I was doing.
Wow, V is canceled.
Now you can cancel my little kid uh, self. Anyway, um,
So yeah, you went. Did you go? What college did you go to for school?
So I went to Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, which is a private university owned by the Mormon Church or LDS Church. So I
Mm-hmm.
was a I was a good Mormon back then, and then
What
um,
happened?
they I got disqualified.
Yeah.
They actually have a good animation program, and so it was a good place to go to kind of like get that education. But um, it was interesting because I am a I'm a practicing homosexual, and that did not coincide with the university very much. But
Sure. Yeah. What was that moment like for you, like kind of realizing it and like because we've talked about it before, and so you can talk about it as much as you feel comfortable,
uh-huh.
but I know it's tough. Like I know it's tough with the Mormon church, like it kind of you get ostracized a little bit. Um was there a moment where you realized that like you couldn't stay with the church anymore, or how did that kind of pan out?
Yeah, there was so I like served the whole Mormon missionary like 2 year thing, and um I got back and was going to BYU, and I'd already been accepted into the animation program.
Where did you go for your
Um
mission?
South Africa.
Oh wow.
Um And so I got back and I started in the animation program, and I was like, um, yeah, I had this dream of like marrying a woman and like being faithful in the
What
church
a dream.
forever, and
Being
the
faithful to
yeah,
your wife, being faithful to the church.
yeah, it because in at the center of the religion is heterosexual marriage, basically.
Hmm.
It's kind of like the way to advance to the highest rank of uh, Mormon heaven, and so it's very like so. Um, yeah, I was like sold on that dream. I was like, I'm going to the highest heaven with my wife, and then I got really depressed because still wasn't attracted to women, even though I was, you know,
Mm.
hoping God would have made that happen by that point.
Right.
um, so then I was like, I'm gonna start dating guys. Long story short, I dated guys in secret through most of my time at BYU. Um, and actually, like for the most part, I mean, it was a stressful experience, but I loved the animation program and I had a lot of great friends that I could confide in. And I think like studying the arts and having a lot of friends who were studying animation, you get a more accepting crowd.
Mm.
Um, and so I, it was, even though it was a weird experience, I really liked my college experience. Um, yeah,
Very cool.
surprisingly.
Yeah. Um,
How did you
cool.
kind of like what was the timeline for you kind of in college, like starting to look for a job or internships, or like how did that transition between college and the professional world happen for you?
So I started like posting my art online, I think in college. I didn't do it at all in high school.
What was your platform of choice?
I think my gateway drug was DeviantArt. That was my foray into the world of internet art.
Hmm.
Um, and then I had like a blog spot and then eventually a Tumblr. Um, and
Blogspot, those were the
Yeah, remember
days.
those
Blogspot?
were the
Jeez.
days.
Yeah.
I
I
think I
remember
still have a portfolio up on a blog spot somewhere that I hope no one ever sees.
I remember I think I started following you on Tumblr. Yeah. Blogspot was just not easy to like get a sense of community and like start making friends because I feel like Blogspot you I don't know, it's like people had to go out of their way to put you in their link list, you know?
Yeah, and there's not a way to like find people unless like everyone I knew on Blogspot I had met in person and was like, follow my Blogspot. So there wasn't a way to like discover new artists because I think I found both of you guys on Tumblr as well.
Probably.
Yeah.
Tumblr was great for that because it was
Yeah.
kind of like I mean, I guess it's still around, but it's like a middle ground where you had your own little space, but because of the reblogs, like it was so easy to spread
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
cool stuff.
So
Yeah.
I had one comic that I made as like part of an Inktober I did. Um, and it was just a comic about like uh oh like it feels so good when like a professional artist likes your post online. And I drew it really sloppy. It was really stupid, but people liked it, and it's like I think my most noted or most liked post on Tumblr, and I think that got um like it increased my following, got my work out there,
Hmm.
and then I think it was about a year after that, Carl Greenblatt, who created Chowder and uh, eventually Harvey Beaks, hired me just by finding my Tumblr.
Yeah, Carl is really good at finding like new artists, like young artists that haven't had their break. Like I feel like he's launched a lot of careers
Yeah,
and he has a really good eye for talent.
yeah, he just kind of he scooped a lot of people up from that space, and
Hmm.
so um, thank you, Carl, if you're listening.
Thank you, Carl. He's been on the show.
Very
Yeah.
grateful. Oh yeah, I
Yeah.
meant to watch his
Yeah, but you
episode.
Yeah.
didn't.
I'm like,
Oh!
So
I'm like, I've heard that bitch's voice
yeah.
too much.
constantly in your ear. Well, interesting technique that Carl has of show running. He watches you draw for 8 hours a day and whispers into your head the whole time.
Yeah. He says, do better, do better,
Yeah,
do better.
yeah, that's all he says. Do better, do better, do better.
I know
And it works. Makes great shows. No, just kidding. But yeah, no. So that was. I mean, that's when we met. Is we were both at Nickelodeon, and you were on Harvey Beaks, and Carl has a really nice approach to. This is a legitimate thing. He has a nice approach to show running where it's very board driven and like the. Harvey Beaks had outlines, right? Harvey Beaks had like writers come up with outlines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But then from there, it's kind of up to the board artist to like make it funny. And how do you feel about that process? Does it work for you, or is it kind of draining?
Like specifically kind of the outline driven format.
Yeah, yeah.
I have some opinions, I think. I think at the time, like fresh out of school, like really eager to work, being able to kind of like write the dialogue was it was exciting, and it was like fun to get my voice in there, and it was fun to pitch my own jokes and hear um the response, like people laugh at it and everything. But I think the whole time I thought, oh, they're gonna run this through a filter, like a real writer is gonna like
Oh,
take this after me and like make it better. But that never happened, and I was like, oh,
yeah.
I guess I'm a writer now.
That's just you.
Yeah.
I guess I wrote a script, yeah. Um, and so it was one of those things where I think it's really fun in principle. And some people it really works for them. Like they love that feeling of writing everything. Um, but for me, I just get burned out so easily doing that.
Yeah, and we
Um,
actually
It's a
had
lot.
Anna Nystrom on the show who worked on Adventure Time who like said the same thing where it was like it's just so much doing both, like the writing
yeah,
and the drawing
It's
that
like 8 jobs.
yeah,
It's a lot.
the burnout is pretty deep. Like I've never worked on a board driven show. The closest thing I've done is Thundercats Roar, where like we had scripts and we could kind of uh we had a lot of room to improve, not I wouldn't say improve, but like kind of redo the pacing, add jokes, cut some dialogue. It was like very malleable in that sense, but at least there was a script. So if we were like too burnt out, it's like I'm just going to do the script.
yeah. You had kind of like it gives a better foundation, I think. At least for me, like the way that I work, it's nice to have like somebody's written all the dialogue, and then having the option of like plussing up
Yeah.
certain parts is fun, or like yeah, like making some edits, but having to write the whole thing on top of drawing the whole thing just made me want to die.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think that in the like during the Adventure Time era that became a very popular thing because it's like this show is made entirely by artists and definitely for me, but I think for a lot of people that was such an alluring thing because it felt like you had such ownership of the final product as an artist.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, I'm like making these episodes. But I have definitely come around like seeing
Yeah.
my friends burn out, seeing kind of the toll it took on almost a whole generation of artists. It's like, yeah, I don't know if this is the right way to go. I think you got to have a pipeline. I think you got to have
Yeah.
artists to do the writing.
I think
And
it's
yeah,
also because it came from shows where the writing was just so much less about the words, but more about like
yeah,
the physical comedy. So it makes
Hmm.
sense to do a board-driven show if it's kind of like a sketch. Kind of like if you look at the early SpongeBob episodes,
hmm,
the dialogue is very simple, and most of the jokes are just like crazy drawings.
well, the boards were like basically beat boards. Like they were so much
Yeah.
simpler then too. Now it's like a basically animation. Um,
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I feel like yeah, now when you have like especially serialized shows where they're like the level of writing is just so high because you're not just writing the episode, you also have to keep track of all the different character
oh
arcs.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
So like shows like and I don't know how you would kind of like rank Harvey Beaks versus Steven Universe in terms of like these kind of like levels of writing that you have to pay attention to, you know? Because Harvey,
Yeah.
like, I think you were doing some callbacks to some older episodes every now and then, right?
Yeah, but it definitely wasn't like a like this ongoing big massive story. It was kind of like more contained, but
Mm.
Yeah.
um
I wanted to ask about because we worked on Jellystone together,
mhm.
and for Jellystone, the process was a little different in that you and the other directors and board artists all got together and wrote all the episodes beforehand. So to me, that was interesting because it still gave the artists and the directors kind of ownership of the content, but it didn't create such a clogged, like difficult pipeline. But I would love to hear your take on like, was that better? Did it have other challenges involved in it?
Yeah, it was a definitely a new process. Like I had never sat down and written outlines before, and I think a lot of the board artists that were in the writing room, like I don't think any of us had really had writing experience like that.
Mm-hmm.
That part was really fun to sit down and like discuss episodes and like come up with things, and then um, everyone would kind of like it'd be like, oh, I'm gonna take this episode and then like write a draft and then come back if I'm remembering correctly, and then we'd all kind of read through it and then give thoughts and everything. I think the biggest thing with these kinds of pipelines is that like it's a great idea, but there just needs to be more time.
Mm-hmm.
Like on Jellystone specifically, it's like it's a really fun idea to um I think write your own episode and then you get to board that episode. Um but they were also boarding alone. They didn't have board partners.
Right.
And it was
That
like a
that's
pretty
tough.
quick turnaround. It was like
It's like 5 weeks, right?
four or 5 weeks, yeah. Um, which is a lot to do by yourself when you're also getting notes on top of that. Um, and a lot of times, like, yeah, there'd just be so many changes that you're boarding a completely different episode by the end of it. So it's one of those things where I like the principle of it, like giving that much creative freedom to someone. And a lot of people love that, but I think that TV production just tends to be really fast turnarounds. And so it's like, okay, you having fun? Like, we'll do it quick and then we'll have do this fun experience again over and over every month for years. And
Yeah.
it's yeah, I think it kind of is just a little
I think
draining because of that.
what you just said about like how this is a job for like a long time that you're supposed to have for a long time is kind of like the thing that we all tend to forget when we like go in the industry at first. We're like, this is great. And then there's a moment when you start getting exhausted and you're like, wait, it's only been a year and a half. I have another 40
Yeah.
years to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're
Last year I was
like,
25, and this year I'm 47 and I don't know what happened.
yeah. Because I remember, I mean, the first gig I ever did, I didn't. It was script driven. It was a fast turnaround, but it was but we were. It was script driven, but we were doing the animatics because they're always trying to cut corners. So if
Right.
you're
Yeah.
not doing the scripts, you're doing the animatic.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember telling production because I was really candid, and production was like they were in the trenches with us. They were also a skeleton crew, so we're on the same side. And
Yeah.
I was like, listen, we were like walking back to the metro, and I was like, I don't know if I can do this my whole life. How am I gonna do
Yeah.
it? And I remember she told me, you know, we always find a way. And I was like,
Just keep smiling.
That can't be good. That cannot be a good way of thinking of this.
I think it's
Um,
just kind of like she had been through the ringer like like a ton, and it was kind of like her way of saying like you'll be fine, or like like just don't worry about it too much, because that's also the thing is like I think when you're in school, I don't know how your school was, but if they had that kind of messaging like you got to work long hours. It's got to be perfect. It's highly competitive. So you better kind of show you're the best.
Yeah.
And when you come into the industry with that mindset, it becomes really, really hard to let go of it. And then it's really, really easy to like work yourself to like the bone. So I don't know if that was
Mhm.
kind of like your experience of college, Aaron.
Like, how so?
You know how so like how some teachers sometimes are like, yeah,
Just like kind of grind yourself to the bone, like work all night kind of mentality?
yeah.
Or, um, there was some of that. My experience was actually like interesting because, well, I mentioned that the animation program was really good at BYU. It's really good in terms of like CG animation. Um, and so in a lot of ways, I didn't receive a ton of instruction from school about like storyboarding, specifically. There's like one class that they had that I took. Um, a lot of stuff I learned with that specific skill came from online. And so I feel like I kind of watched them pressure the CG artists, like work all night, blah, 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 like do this stuff. And then I was
Mhm.
just kind of like, I'm my own thing. Like I'm, I don't think I fell prey to that mindset too much, which is why I've always kind of had a mentality of I'll do the bare minimum at work and that's that's what I'm getting paid for and that's what I'm going to
Yeah.
do. Um, yeah, and so it's been frustrating when I feel like I'm in spaces where it's expected like oh, part of your payment is the job satisfaction and your enjoyment from this and
Yeah, that shit's
you
Uh,
have so much creative liberty and I'm like I'm like I don't want that liberty like lock me up, give me give me a script, lock me to a script, like give me freedom a little bit, like give me some wiggle room, but
well,
like I don't want to be
yeah.
too burnt out here.
It's a whole other thing to unpack, but it definitely is how studios abuse the notion of like this is a dream job for their own gain, right? And
Yeah.
and we see it all the time, especially with younger artists, and we've definitely talked about it on the show before, where it's like people are young artists want to be in this because they love this, and so when they're brought in, they're willing to do the extra to go the extra mile, and studios love that because it's like
Hmm.
it's basically free labor, and they don't have to
mhm.
worry about they don't care, like they're just like, oh, you love this, right? Yeah, put in all these extra hours because you love this and this is going to be a great show. And it's like
Yeah.
I have had all these conflicted feelings about it because sometimes you get really awesome shows that mean a lot to a lot of people from that, and like from artists kind of pouring themselves into it. But the flip side of that is that it leads to massive burnout. And then with what we've been seeing is lately with all these mergers and cancellations and firings, and it's a harsh reminder that the studios don't give a shit about you and don't give a shit about
Yeah.
the shows, and so it's like there is a version of the industry where where budgets are more generous, and schedules in turn are more generous, and people can put more of themselves into it, but they are rewarded for it, with either like better work-life balance or just literally more money. Um,
Hmm.
the way things are now, it's in my eyes is challenging because there's just no benefit. There's no real benefit to doing that grind kind of mentality, because it's like, to what end? To get fired? Like when
Yeah.
Warner Brothers merges with NBC or whatever the next thing is. Like, so I don't know.
I
And
think
from
it's
that,
like,
yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. I thought there was like a little pause.
No, no, no. Yeah, go ahead.
But I do think, no, I like what you said, Aaron, about like this is a job and I'm gonna stick to the hours because I feel like this is how we create realistic expectations for the studios.
Yes.
And also I think it's really, really hard for a lot of artists to come into this industry because it's like what used to be kind of like your hobby, your passion, your little like secret garden now becomes your
Yeah.
job. And this is, I think a lot of artists who work in animation go through this like identity crisis because it's like, what who am I? What am I? And I think, and at least for me, I've always thought to myself, I never want to not like drawing because it's like so important to me.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So I always made a point to keep doing personal art because I was like, if I ever didn't like drawing anymore, I would be so depressed. And I like that you do post a lot of personal art and comics. And did you start doing comics on the sides or personal art on the side since college, or is this something that you started doing while you were working, when you started working?
Um, yeah, I've always like had my own kind of a lot of my online posting is or if well actually all of my online posting is just art that I do in my free time and for fun. I don't think I've ever posted a storyboard. Um, it's almost like I feel like it would taint that space a little bit.
I completely
But
understand.
yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I always I exactly the same thing you said, V. Like I have to have um this I have to keep it mine and I have to be my own boss with drawing at least at some time of the day because I see tons of people who are like yeah, I think I hate drawing now or I
That's
can't draw
me.
anymore without it. Hey, our very own Gene.
Yeah, we have
That
the
sounds just like me.
the other perspective now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to ask you about your comics and like I think you've created that balance for yourself where you have your personal work and V too and me. I mean all three of us, I guess. We have our
Mhm.
personal work and the job is the job.
Hmm.
And when things go south, as they often do with jobs, it's not as heartbreaking because you haven't poured all of yourself into it. It's just like, well, shit, there goes my
Yeah.
paycheck. But like, you can find another job, but fulfillment and purpose is so much harder to keep healthy. And I think that's going back to what I was rambling about. That's where it's tough, where people put too much of themselves into the job, and that's why it's so fucking heartbreaking when
Yeah.
when studios shut down because it's like, well, yeah, you put too much of yourself. Like you can't
Yeah.
because it's ultimately for stocks. It's to make stock
And
prices go up.
it's also
Yeah.
kind of hard because it's not yours. Like, even
Exactly.
if you pour your heart and soul in a Batman movie, you don't own Batman. Like, you know,
A slap in the face from V.
You don't own
you
Batman.
don't own
You'll
Batman.
never own Batman.
Well, maybe in your personal art folder, but
Yeah.
cut this. I don't know. Maybe we keep it.
Why? Why? V
No,
has so much
it's really
Batman
true.
porn.
Shh. That would be so funny though. I'm sorry to say that I don't. It's yeah. Anyhow, I'm too
Disappointing.
vanilla. But back to the yeah, like you pour your heart and soul in a property because I feel like especially now it's not even if it's an original property, if you're a board artist or even a director, it's still not yours. Like
Yeah.
it's the showrunners, and even then, it's not even so much of the showrunners anymore because the company still owns it. So it's like
Yeah.
maybe 80% the showrunners.
That's what I think. Yeah, it almost makes it I like that separation almost a little bit because it keeps me from getting too invested
Hmm.
in the things that I work on. It's like, oh yeah, I'll like babysit your kid, but I'm gonna go home and like back to my own children whom I,
Right.
actually love and created and you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
you don't
100%.
get attached to the kids you babysit, or you shouldn't because,
It's like being the fun uncle. You
being a
can spoil the
fun
kids.
uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Sometimes you
Um,
splurge a little bit, but most of the time you don't think about that.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's so
honestly.
awful.
You take your paycheck and you go home. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love it.
Um, but yeah, it makes it easier to kind of stay emotionally detached, I think. I realized that very early on in working in animation, it was on Harvey Beaks where I think when we first started to get our episodes back, and it was like, oh, I get to see like a finished episode that I worked on. and like they came out great. The episodes came out
Yeah.
great, but it did feel like, oh, it didn't feel mine. It didn't like things that I had made had changed, or
Yes.
like the voice actors read it a little differently, and it was like, oh, so my original vision isn't there. The show's still good. It's a lot of people, coming together to make something
Sure.
good,
Mhm.
but it was like, oh, I think that this isn't as much mine as I think very early on I started to kind of step back and be like, okay, this is um yeah, this
Yeah.
is
No,
not going to be as fulfilling as I think I thought it was going to be.
it makes sense. I went through the same thing on my first board job, which is Animaniacs, and I knew that that was going to be it was a big show with a really actually well kind of thought out pipeline where there is writers and then there is borders and everything. But still, yeah, it's like so much was changed from beginning to end that I feel like zero ownership of anything that I did. I like never even watched my episodes really because I knew there was not going to be anything left of any of my
Yeah.
choices. So I was just like, whatever.
I think
I
that's
don't care.
something that people tend to forget sometimes when they think about boards. Like sometimes you're really, really lucky. Like you get on a show where like almost all of the boards that you did are yours and they end up
Yeah.
in the episode. But it's not always the most common thing. Because so many people have to give notes. So it has to be a little bit of like a lightning in the bottle kind of situation for your boards to really make it into final,
Yeah.
Mhm.
because there's so many layers of people giving notes. It's not only just the director and then the supervising director and then the showrunner and then the execs, and then you got to trickle down all these notes again, and then SNP, that's another entity, and then so yeah, it I think it's easy to forget that there's all these layers of approval and notes and things that have to change the product. That yeah.
Yeah, and it's not always like, and it's easy to at first take that personally. I think it's like, oh, they changed
Yeah.
everything, but then you realized, oh, they had to change this line because you actually can't say frick or something. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, or
Mm-hmm.
they S&P says you can't, do this. It runs through so many filters that are just like the rules of what's allowed to be kind of published by a studio, that it's like, oh, so it's like it's not really a shortcoming on my part that things changed. I
Yeah,
mean,
not at
sometimes
all.
it is, sometimes you just give a sucky board and then they have to fix it.
Mhm.
But a lot of times it's just like, oh no, things just change, and that's why it's kind of like you don't want to get too attached to it because it'll come out of the pipeline different than it's like they changed my baby's face.
Yeah.
What happened to my baby?
Yeah. So, what was the first comics project that you did that made you kind of rediscover that part of you?
Um, Yeah, so I was always doing like personal art, like fan art, just like sketchbooking or whatever, but I kind of I think I've always wanted to have sort of like a project or to publish something of my own. Um and so I think it was around Harvey Beaks, or maybe my job after Big City Greens, where I started really trying to commit to making a comic. And the first comic I tried making was called The Evergreen Heart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was actually based on an idea that I came up with while I was a missionary in South Africa.
Hmm.
Oh wow.
And because of that, and I was still obviously like very Mormon at the time, it had a lot of like Christian themes and messages.
Mm.
Um, Not that I was like, the big spoiler at the end, here's Jesus and he saves the day. It wasn't that on the nose, but it was very much like inspired by religious doctrine, which is, I think, part of the reason why it kind of, well, I ended up abandoning it, because it was like,
Mhm.
oh, I don't really feel a lot of these morals and the kind of
Yeah.
theme in my life
Yeah.
anymore.
Mhm.
Um, but I will say this, it was a great experience trying to make a comic, because I think it was like the best boot camp for drawing. Um, because it was like, okay, I wrote this story where uh, they live in I don't know, like these houses, and they have to have these objects, and it's like, okay, I guess I have to learn how to draw houses and this and environments, because I want to show characters in a scene, and it was like a great way to learn how to kind of structure a comic. That's what I kind of consider it now, is like my boot camp in comics. Um,
I agree. I feel like comics are a great way to practice a lot of different things like art, but also writing and also how you structure a scene and pacing and everything. It's like almost pretty much like directing your own like feature
Hmm.
or
yeah,
TV show. It's
yeah,
really
exactly.
and after so you said that yeah, there was a moment like it kind of you kind of fell off the messages that you initially wanted to have in this comic. Did you know you wanted to make another comic after you were kind of like, ah, I don't know if I want to keep doing this one?
Yeah, so another reason I kind of gave up on the Evergreen Heart was I bit off way more than I could chew. I had kind of structured this story that was like gonna be, one of those epic fantasy journeys, and I wanted these storylines to tie together at the end. And I realized at the pace I was able to make the comic, I started to really stress myself out because I was like, I'm gonna die
Yeah.
before this is literally, if I keep going at this pace, it's gonna take like 50 years. And that was like, that's like not even really an exaggeration. I like was trying to calculate like, okay, in this amount of time, I finished this amount of pages. Based on the outline I've made, it's gonna be like maybe this amount of pages is gonna take me like 5,000 years to do this. Um,
Yeah.
so I kind of it almost became, because of the huge project that it was, it almost started to feel like a job and like a an obligation. Like I need to
Yeah.
finish this, I need to finish this, and I stopped enjoying working on it. Um, and so that was kind of around the beginning of the pandemic. And I kind of stopped working on it, and for the next like 2 years was kind of just floating through. Like I really wanted to have a project, but I felt like I was in limbo, like between things. Like
Hmm.
I didn't want to work on the Evergreen Heart anymore, but I didn't have a very solid idea of what I wanted to do next. Um, and eventually, so Mommy's Miracle Tank was kind of this like small idea I had in the back of my head for a couple of years, based on some drawings I did on Tumblr back in like 2015. Um, and I was like, oh, maybe I can like make this into a thing and structure it in a way that's better for myself mentally, like make it more silly and lighthearted and episodic, so that I don't feel like I have to commit to this huge kind of adventure, I guess.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so I think I feel really comfortable now working on it. And I think because I recognized how I like to work and what I like to work on, and I work better with kind of like small chunks of things. Like I'll do like a 12-page chapter. It'll just be silly, have like silly jokes. And I kind of was, even the world I made is kind of like, what would you say? Just weird. Like I wanted a world with like kind of less rules so I could just do whatever I want.
Hmm.
And I think walking into a comic with that premise was way better for my brain. Um, because yeah, it just, I found that that works for me better, and I can kind of, yeah, it's just healthier for my
You
head.
know, that's really funny that you mentioned that because I remember being on Instagram looking at Michael DeForge's story. Like he did an AMA. For those who don't know, he's a graphic novel artist based in Canada. And someone asked him
Mhm.
like, how do you plan a for graphic novel? And I really liked his answer that was, well, I kind of have like a nebulous idea of where I want to go, and I kind of plot some beats, but then I keep it always just up to the surprise of what I discover while I try to hit these beats. And I was like, so then it stays fresh, and I was like, oh, this is so smart because it's like you do have a direction but it's still enjoyable and fun. Because I think what
Hmm.
you're saying is like with these long projects, it's so easy to become bored of them.
Yeah, it really is. Um, and yeah, it's I think just kind of like making it's almost like I built a playground
Hmm.
and I'm like, I'm just gonna go play on it. And today I'll play on the jungle gym. Today I'll play on the slides. Today I'll play on the
That's a good way to think
swings.
of it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Like, I think like I'm I decided, okay, I'm gonna make characters in a world where kind of anything can happen, and there's like some framework, but I can just sort of jump in and be like, you know what, I want to draw um, a cat lady today, like, and so I'm gonna just draw that. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, just being able to jump in and do whatever your brain wants to do that day is really refreshing, especially compared to what we do for work,
Hmm.
where it's
Yeah.
like follow this outline, follow
Yeah.
this
You're locked
script,
in.
stick to the lore of our show or whatever, and it's like
Hmm.
stick to the style of our show, and it's like it's very freeing, I think, having that kind of project.
To piggyback off of that, we like to ask our guests how they deal with creative block and what it feels like for them.
Um, yeah, I so that was one of the I was ready for that question, and I was like, how do I deal with creative block? And then I'm like, I don't think I deal with creative block. Like I don't handle it very well. Like I get really like pissy and grumpy about it. I think I would have like grown up a little bit by now, but it's like every time it happens because I'll get into a rhythm of like creating something and feel really great, and then as it happens, you crash and then you can't do anything for days or weeks or like however long at a time.
Sure.
And I just get I just get mad like and it's a pattern I feel like I should get used to and just accept the break, but then I have this anxiety that if I lean too much into the break,
Hmm.
then I will then um enjoy that too much and then lose the motivation, or
Oh my
the
God, this sounds so familiar.
yeah, so I know it's like I need to practice like this sort of self-care of letting myself rest, but I also know that I can I can sleep for a long time if I let myself. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, it's I guess to answer your question, it's like I think I'm still kind of figuring it out, and it's helpful to be surrounded by artistic people who remind me all the time that like, oh, you're just going through, it's just a phase, like you'll get out of it. I think having that support from like-minded friends helps a lot too.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, that's what we
but
try to. That's why we ask the question because everyone deals with it differently. And like, I've gotten
yeah.
some. I feel like even just talking to people, I feel like I've obtained some like hacks. I don't know. Like I've figured out that
Please,
like
please
sometimes it is
share.
good to just well, just like you mentioned it, but it's like the accepting it and walking away from things and switching gears. Like we've had a lot of good little tidbits
Hmm.
over the past couple of years.
Or like,
Um,
because also sometimes like it's like, I think it's like, do you have to practice some kind of self-care? Kind of like, because there's like self-care that is kind of like it can be physical, it can be like more artistic or like spiritual or whatever, like doing the thing that you've kind of like left aside because you were grinding at work so much. So I think for me that's something that I often it's kind of something that I see recurring a lot is like, oh, like trying really hard to crack an idea and then it's like, oh, but I've been letting my self-care kind of slide, so that's why I'm not like at the top of my mental shape. I
yeah.
don't know. That's
Yeah.
People will ask me like, "Oh, like when do you sleep with all the stuff you do?" And I'm like, "It's because I sleep a lot that I can do all the things I do." Like you need that rest, that whole mentality of like staying up all night to work on something. It's like, "Okay, well then you're going to pay for that later. Like you're going to
Yeah.
end up feeling that later even if you don't have it now."
Isn't
I
there
But
like a
agree.
quote from like who's the Shigeru Mizuki, who is that his name? Who did the like Kentaro
Yeah.
comics? Um,
No.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's a quote I read. It was like, my peers like Osamu Tezuka, and he mentioned someone else. Like they always were bragging, they would stay up all night and like not sleep and make all these comics and bust out all these pages and whatever. But then he was like, but he was like, you know what? I sleep all the time, and guess what? They're dead, and I'm still alive. And
Damn.
it was something like that, and I could be totally like quoting the
I love
wrong
that.
people. Like maybe I fabricated this in my head, but I kind of like think about that all the time, where it's like, yeah, you know what? I'd rather take my daily nap, sleep my 8 hours every night, and live long.
100%.
I agree. And I feel like, I don't know, sleep is so important. It's so easy to overlook, but I feel like ever since I started sleeping actual full nights, I'm like, I feel so much better about life.
Yeah,
Who knew?
seriously. Who knew? It's like
Who
the
knew?
basic human
The,
needs, they work.
Yeah.
um, we had some questions that we would love to ask you.
Okay.
We're gonna answer some from our Discord first.
It's like,
If
no, I
you,
think I'm done. Yeah.
yeah, just sign off and we're just silent.
I'm
Well,
really tired. Actually, speaking of naps.
yeah, I guess we'll talk to each other, V.
I'll just
Uh,
honk snoo on the
yeah,
mics.
you could hear you snoring in the back.
Wee, wee,
I think I'm
wee,
done.
wee.
I want to start with questions from our Discord. If you love our
Cool.
show, support us on Patreon and get access to our Discord. From Byalan's Bear. I'm assuming you started out as an artist. So how was that transition to writing? Was it difficult at first, or did it come naturally to you since you were already a storyteller before via drawings?
Oh, that's a good question. Um, I think like I kind of said before, like I even then I started writing, I never really felt like a qualified writer for a long time. Because I had never like studied it or had any experience. Um, but then as I did it and realized I could do it and was good at writing dialogue or outlines or whatever, um, it's kind of one of those things. It overlaps so much, yeah, with like the creativity I was doing before in like just storytelling and even just I don't know, just being having a reckless imagination, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of, you know, you could funnel that into writing too. You just kind of had to um, just do it, to
Yeah.
realize that you could do it.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's kind of my experience. I have to like, I put it on like my resume and stuff. Like I'm a script writer and I'm like I'm a writer. It still feels like I'm having this like imposter moment every time I say it because it's like, um, but I'm trying to do the whole thing. It's like will will that into existence, like just by saying it a lot.
It's tough.
And also just reminding
It's
myself, like, yeah, I have done it. I have writing credits, so it's like, why do I feel
Yeah.
stupid calling myself a writer?
yeah, it never really
Yeah.
goes away.
Yeah,
Yeah, relatable. I feel like it's so crazy that because you are a writer, you've obviously written for these shows, but then it's that feeling if it's like, well, if I have an open final draft and punch some keys on a
Right?
keyboard, you know.
yeah. Seriously, It's like I don't know how to write in script format, so I'm not a I'm not a
Yeah.
real writer.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of weird little gatekeeping that happens.
Yeah.
Um, from Joe, actually, from Brother to Drummer. What is your favorite mood setting jam to throw on to get motivated?
Wait, say it again. Moods setting
Mood
jam.
setting jam. So, like, what
Mood
song do
setting
you listen
jam.
to? Yeah.
Okay.
To get pumped.
To get pumped. Okay, I am a little strange with this because I a lot of times don't listen to music. Um,
Hmm.
it's like it just kind of if I do, it's to drown out if there's noise around me. Like a lot of times I'll go to like a cafe or something to draw on my iPad, like draw comic stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
just to drown out noise, I'll put on like a lo-fi playlist because it's kind of like background music.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, even I don't really like listen to a ton of music. Sometimes it just I love music, but sometimes it just like sounds it's like too distracting for me when I am trying to think about something, if that makes
Mm.
sense. So I
Yeah,
guess
like
mostly just like instrumental stuff is my answer to that.
Do you listen to
Like,
like video game soundtracks?
oh yeah, that stuff's great. Love
Yeah.
it.
I can never do that. Like I can't and I think it's because I've never found instrumentals that feel good for me. Um like when I need to get shit done, I put on Slipknot's live album and just like
Mhm.
fucking
It's
go.
it's amazing. I marvel at even when I can't exercise with music either. I don't know,
Really?
it's weird.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so
Interesting.
Um,
interesting. Yeah.
Everyone's got
you know
different
what?
things.
It's not because of that quote in the animation
I was gonna
survival
say,
thing.
yeah, you would make
Because
that.
I would no no no. I actually hate that.
Yeah, I hate that
When that
too.
the guy yelling at him is like, "You crazy? I can't listen to music." And I'm
Isn't
like,
It's just,
it isn't
keep
it
your opinions to
the
yourself.
isn't it milk cow that's like in
I think
the
it's
milk.
milk call.
Yeah, like ugh, I don't know if you guys had that in school, but I remember when I was in Google, like everyone was like looking at his like
Yeah.
line tests that were posted on Vimeo, and everyone's he's so good. I mean, I guess he was. But
Idiot. What does he know?
but
What
I'm
does
like
he know?
I'm like, yeah, I don't know. That's so crazy to see, like, you're reminded, like, wow, like the old times,
Well, it's
people.
just like it's one man's opinion. Like, yes,
Yeah.
he's a very talented man, but it's one man's opinion. Like, brains are all different.
Yeah,
And
it's
it's just such a weird thing to get so hung up on just because it's in a book. Like, I don't know.
I know. I just really wanted to clarify that if you love listening to music, go for it. If you
Please,
don't,
yeah.
don't listen to music. Do whatever you want. Don't listen
Yeah.
to Milt.
Those of you
He'll
Milt.
lead you astray.
Yeah. No,
I'm just
it's
gonna call him
whatever.
Milt from now on. I'm not
Milt.
gonna give him his last name.
What-
Hey,
whatever gets
Milt.
you, whatever like works for you, man. I don't know. I'll go into moment if I can start work and I'm already kind of in a focused mood. Like it kind of has to happen by accident with me almost, where it's like I started on a task and I like forgot to put on music, and then I'm
Hmm.
like 2 hours later, I'm like I've been sitting in silence for 2 hours. Like that happens, but most mornings I'll like put on some, background TV noise or YouTube or something, and that just like helps me um almost like it helps me focus more because I'm like not there's less pressure on it.
It's like a little
Yeah.
ritual.
It
Yeah.
is a
I
ritual,
I
100%.
did I definitely have that thing where like when I put on my headphones, I'm like, now I can work. Even if I don't always play music, most of the time I play music, but like putting on my headphones feels really nice. I'm like, okay,
Yes. I used
I
to when it's not 100 degrees outside, I love making like hot tea in the morning just cuz it like puts me in
yeah.
that, I'll have a little mug, I'll have my funny little mug and I'll drink my little tea and I'll just get in the zone.
Cozy vibes.
Cozy vibes, yeah.
Mm.
From Joe Benson, whose idea was it to use Lean on Me in season 1 of Amphibia? And were y'all gonna put more emotional, well-known songs in the rest of the series? Were you in on season 1?
I was, yeah, on season one, and then I
Okay.
did like one episode on season two. Um, I I think I like rolled off the show before that episode was made.
Sure.
Because I think my last episode on the season was before they had made that episode. So I have no clue
Okay.
about any of that. I apologize.
That's okay.
Love Bill Withers though.
Yeah. This person has no way of knowing which episodes you worked on. Let's jump over to Twitter and ask some questions from the Twitter prompt.
Yeah.
Um, like fellow Harvey Beaks, Big City Greens, and Jellystone alumni, have you ever thought of pitching your own Disney show? Or I guess just show in general?
Um, this is a question I get all the time. Because I've seen a lot of friends pitch their own shows, and kind of going off what we talked about before, like um, I think if I was given like a studio's existing IP, like if Nickelodeon came to me and said, "Hey, make a rug, not Rugrats, or I guess yeah, that's Nickelodeon. Make a Rugrats or make a
Yeah.
Garfield show." Um, like just as an example, I think I could do something like that, but pitching my own show to a studio is something I don't think I ever want to do.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of
Um,
sense. Yeah.
because it's another thing. It's like, oh, it's like, um, am I gonna surrender my creation to um, the studio when I know it's going to go through all these filters, go through all these changes, get focus tested,
Hmm.
um, and even then, just like be worked on by so many people that it won't be, or I'll have to be like clamoring to keep it what I want it to be. And like, I don't want to be that kind of control freak in that scenario, which is why I
Yeah.
like having a comic because it's like I can just do things my way. I don't have to like count on anyone other than myself, and I also don't have to like go through any notes passes or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, and honestly, like I just seen so much heartache from people pitching beautiful shows, amazing ideas, and then just seeing networks like, no thanks.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
No, it's not for everyone.
I
It's not
feel
for
like,
anyone.
yeah, I feel
it's not
like
for anyone.
I feel like it's kind of funny when we'll see, maybe we'll cut this from the podcast. But like it's kind of funny
Do
when you
tell.
see shows that have premises that are literally like, well, he's just a kid with spiky blonde hair and two sisters that are scientists. And and it's like, and it's picked up, it has seasons, and you're like, huh, maybe we don't need to think that hard. I don't
No,
know.
we don't. We don't. It's the
That's the
the
thing. You'd have to pitch something. It's got to be like, this is about a booger that fell in a puddle, and now that booger can sing, and he goes to Broadway. And it's like,
I'm taking
they're
notes
like,
here.
yeah, that's a anyone can take that idea.
Yeah,
Just put me in the credits.
I think that no, I will not. I think that's the healthier approach in a lot of ways. What you described, and that's I see. I feel like the people that have the most success with actually getting shows at least picked up into development. Greenlighting is a whole other nightmare. But at
Hmm.
least getting picked in development, it really is. It's just like you water it down to like I mean, they say it's an elevator pitch, but I think it's more than that. It's just like a Netflix description.
Yeah.
It's like you have to be just flipping through things. That's why I've tried to start thinking of my ideas because they end up being too huge. And then I'm like, well, how would like a mom flipping through Netflix even understand this and put it on for her kid to watch? Like that's the
Yeah.
level of dumbed down that you have to think when you're presenting these things.
And then
It's
even
wild.
then, it's like, yeah. And I think we all entered the industry also with the idea that Hollywood and entertainment was going to be a lot more forward thinking than it
Oh
actually is.
boy, yeah,
But I
it's
think
Yeah.
because they realize they have to sell these, products essentially to a global or like
yeah.
international market, like a lot, you'll like pitch, oh, I want to have, a female main character. And they're like, well, how are the how are the boys gonna like that? Maybe she likes dirt bikes. Maybe she's just one of the guys, and then we can get our male viewership. And it's like, what the fuck? I can't believe we're like it just feels insane having to deal with that's the kind of notes you get when you go into development and you just have like can have this beautiful idea that it just has to go through like filters like that, and it's like I
Yeah.
don't want to have to think about you know are the anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's
I'm
That makes a lot of sense. No, no, no. I mean, I totally get it because that's what I was thinking about recently. I was thinking about because I've been pitching a lot recently. I've pitched for both of the um shorts program, the Cartoon Network one and the Nickelodeon one. And I just kind of keep and before I pitched to them, I was working on a pitch for 6 months, like an idea that I had for a very long time that I really love, that a lot of my artist friends really love, but for some reason, it's like like when I pitch it, I feel like, oh, then like it's like nobody understands it. And I didn't even think it was like that hard of an idea.
Mhm.
It's like kind of like it's kind of a classic kind of like medieval um anthro world, and there's like, it's a bit of like a vaudeville where it's like we pretend to be a thing and then we're another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And that's just like, well, is it a wait, what is this? Is this
Yeah.
like, are we, do we have knights or do we have comedy? You know?
Oh my God.
It's like, and I'm like,
It's
all right, I'm just gonna, and then I was like, I'm just gonna stop pitching stuff that are not in our reality because it's too
oh yeah.
confusing. And I was like, all right, let's just suburban,
One
suburban American neighborhood. We're all on the same page.
one of my favorite, like I think people were talking about this online kind of a while ago, but how people will say like, oh, the people get notes like, we want to see if they can relate to that. So show them in class and show their
Yeah.
classmates and things like that. And it's like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what kid wants to? I mean, it's like you can make a school show fun, sure, but to like consider that a requirement for like getting into the kid demographic, it's like I can't see a kid being like, "Mommy, they don't go to school."
No,
Like, I don't get it.
it's
Like,
like creatively brain dead. I'm not gonna pull punch. Like it
yeah.
is people who have never done a creative thing in their fucking lives that are trying to like understand children, but also like creativity, and it like drains me and pisses me off so much to see
To be fair,
that.
Yeah.
though, I know where you're coming from. I do feel like we tend to forget that some of those like really big era of cartoons had a lot of shows like Doug or like Recess or like Ed and Eddie or Dexter is very grounded in reality. And to some extent, Invaderism is on, it's pretty much reality. It's
Yeah.
a cartoony version of it, but it is reality and they still go to school. So I think it's like, I don't know, I've been thinking about that a lot recently because I'm like, I just want to do fantasy and sci-fi. And then I'm like, okay, wait, hold on, let's kind of look at you know what are the shows that have
Well,
been made in the
yeah.
past 20 years. And then I was like,
It de-
you
it
know.
depends on your approach, right? Because it's like
Yeah.
if you're comfortable with that,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
because I mean,
Yeah.
there's also a lot of other shows that were complete nonsense. There was a show about two beavers, you know, like, and
Yeah.
so I think it's just it's the limitations that annoy me. That it feels like they look for a formula
That's
to make.
what I was gonna say.
Yeah,
Like
Yeah.
making rules, trying to apply rules to it is just always gonna kill it.
yeah, because like
Yeah.
for sure, like school stuff is good for a reason, and there's a reason why it works. But to limit other shit, you're cutting off the next. You know, people love Star Wars. Boy, do they love talking about how Star Wars. I've been in writers meetings where they're like, look, look, you talk about Luke Skywalker, right? And like blah blah blah. And I'm like, I got so fucking sick of hearing people compare shit to Star Wars and like bringing it up as this like pillar of amazing storytelling, because it's like, first of all, Star Wars is not the mind-blowing perfect story that people want to make it seem. But even
Yeah.
if you like it, which is fine, I love Star Wars too, but like they keep coming back to it, and it's like that shit is like it. I don't know. I don't even know. I'm
It's
getting it.
like it's one of those things. It's like it's just a narrow mindset, I think. It's like they don't have a wide scope of like what a good story can be, you know?
Yeah.
They see what's, been successful and it's like, okay, that's the model, that's the
Yeah,
formula.
you
And
can't
it's
have
like,
everything be Star Wars. Like I don't know.
yeah.
And also, I think what's kind of funny about bringing up Star Wars is that Star Wars was like a really hard show
Yeah.
to pitch and
It
get
wasn't.
picked up.
It wasn't easy. It was successful, yes, but honestly, even within the parameters of its success, it wasn't the global hit it is now. Like, it was a very nerdy movie that built up over time. A lot of stuff like that is, and they missed that aspect of it. Like
Yeah.
even
People weren't
some
on board with it. I heard
no, they
stories
weren't.
like when they were like shooting it, some people were just like, Nerd Central over there. This is never gonna go anywhere, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
100%.
Yeah.
I like the show The Offer, which is about how they made The Godfather, and like it's probably exaggerated a lot of it, but it's great because it shows how even The Godfather, which is like considered one of the best movies of all time, everyone was like, "What is this fucking mafia picture? Like, it's this bullshit." And like, and they had to keep saying like, "It's not a." They're like, "It's a gangster film," and like, "It's not a gangster film. It's about family. It's like really heartwarming, whatever." And it's just so funny because nobody's ever gonna understand. Yeah, nothing is going to be good until it's proven, and you're never going to get anything good if you're always worrying about what's already been proven. Anyway,
Yeah.
um,
That's why it seems like well, it's like I've heard that studios almost kind of want to see something established already, like um want to see that, oh, like that you have like a comic, or like you kind of have to almost like make something on your own first to kind of prove that it can be, that your vision can be good, I think.
Hmm.
Um Almost as a way to, like, if you want to then eventually make it something bigger, like a show, like I think it helps convince people of that. Maybe,
for
I don't
sure.
know.
I
Just
also
I agree.
surprising.
think, like from my personal experience, I feel like relationships are almost more important than the idea. Like
Yeah.
I think people want to like they want to know your track record and they want to have met up with you and talk to you enough that they're like, we can trust this person. They're
Mm-hmm.
not gonna blow fuse or whatever. Like,
Hmm.
and that they are talented enough to be a leader, because it's not just about the idea, but it's also about, are you going to be able, like, you're basically, I know, like, I mean, because I fell in this trap as well when I was like a kid. I was like, I want to be a mangaka, and then you look at like how mangakas actually work, and you're like, oh, this is awful. And then you're like, I want to be a
Yeah.
showrunner, and then you're like, oh, and it's like, and it's like,
Everywhere you turn, everyone's suffering.
Yeah, no, it's true.
yeah. And it's like, you're not and then you're like an engineer. Like you're kind of like you're not as much of you're a little bit of a creator, but mostly you're like a product uh engineer.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's a good way to think of it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to think of it. I think that we and I'll speak for myself. Like, I definitely thought that it was more about a creative endeavor, and it's not. It's what V said. It is a product. Like, you're selling a product.
Yeah.
And I think for anybody pitching and going into it, I think it's really important to keep that in mind and work backwards from that. And that's where, when you go into pitch, it's good to have an idea of like, it's this plus this, because it's like how inventors will be like, it's the chamois that, dry. Like, it's like those infomercials. Like, that's how you have to think of a pitch, almost. Like, it cleans messes with no fuss, and it shows like the people in black and white like fucking dropping all of their plates or whatever, and it's like that. It's like, you thought that show was good, now it's that show, but it's this now, and it'll make even more money. And
Yeah.
it's
It's like, which it's, I don't know. I can't get myself in the pitch mindset. Like, I don't think I have that salesman mentality.
That's a huge part of it. And that's the part that's like the hardest, at least for me. And I think that's why I do rely a lot on those kind of comparisons. It's like,
mm-hmm.
remember these two shows? Well, imagine what they could be together. And then this character is like this beloved actor, or this character is like this other beloved
Yeah,
character
yeah.
from this beloved show. And I think
Yeah.
that really, I didn't at first, I was like, I hate this. And now I'm like, that kind of makes sense. Like, it's like it kind of helps people visualize,
Yeah,
you know.
it's
Yeah.
structure. It structures a pitch in a way that makes it easy for people
Yeah.
to understand. A couple of questions, last questions,
Okay.
from at Sparrow Core. It's a doozy, but it's, how has being a gay artist influenced your experience in the industry?
Hmm. How's being a gay artist influenced my experience in the industry? Um, let's see. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is and I've talked about this, but like the conflict between growing up gay and Mormon,
Hmm.
um, and kind of like resolving that. I think the here's what I think. Trauma, you can turn your traumas into a sense of humor, or like you can kind of gain a sense of humor when you go through like shit in your life,
Hmm.
just by sort of laughing it off. And I
Hmm.
honestly like I um I think that's one of the best things it's given me. It's that like, oh, like this has been really hard, but it's kind of funny if you think about it.
Hmm.
Like turning those things into like making it lighthearted almost. Um, so I think like going through that, having that conflict kind of gave me a perspective on life that to kind of look at things with more of a sense of humor, which helps a lot in, storyboarding and working in TV animation and on comedy things um and I could kind of like when I was at BYU it was a lot of like uh cis straight white people,
Hmm.
which is like what the Utah population is,
Hmm.
um and I was like it just very vanilla, which can be like a very vanilla sense of humor or like kind of thing came out of a lot of I don't know, like that mindset. And I was like, oh, I think like I had kind of like a darker mentality, I think, or like a darker sense of humor. Um, and I think it made the stuff that I made kind of stand out a little bit more compared to this very tame, you know, abide by God's law content that was coming out of
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of LDS people. Not to say that, if you're a practicing religious person, you can't be funny, but I think it kind of helped me develop my own voice in a space where I felt like nobody was saying the things that I was saying.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I guess that's kind of how it's been a good influence. I mean, like living in LA and like working in animation is so open-minded and there's so many, you know, gay people, people on the spectrum, there's such a variety of people that I feel very at home and it's easy to be completely myself in this space, which is really nice. So it's nice to
Yeah.
feel safe in a place first because that helps you do good at your job,
I
Yeah.
think
Well,
that's what you're also touching on is that I think there's like a maybe a little bit of a divide between the perception of the industry with all of like what's going on right now, like corporation kind of cracking down on the content, the the
hmm
the what's inside the content that's being made versus what the teams like what the identity of the teams are. And
yeah.
I think the crews and the people who make the content are way more like diverse
Oh yeah.
than the content that comes out because the content has to go through the notes, but the people don't have to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a
that's true.
good clarification to make is that everyone that I work alongside with is of, a very open-minded, kind of very creative mindset. But then there are if that's what you're talking about, kind of how
Yeah, kind of
those
how.
filters of um, the higher up filters, that's where things get a bit more conservative, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Um, this person actually had a few good questions. What type of things do you hate drawing? Some artists hate hands, birds, etc.
that's sorry, that's such a that's such a fun list. I just like some artists hate hands,
Birds,
some hate
hand.
birds.
I love that.
I like here's what I don't like drawing. I don't like drawing things realistically, and maybe that's also just because I can't. Um, but I also just don't want to. If I ever have to or feel like I have to draw a likeness of someone, or likeness of anything really without getting to exaggerate it, I hate that.
Hmm.
Because I feel constrained again.
Mm.
So there's not necessarily something specific because everything I draw, I like to kind of put it through. my own filter of what I want it to look like in my drawing, whether it's like birds or hands or um I kind of found that especially in drawing comics, I was like, oh, you know what? I wasn't really good at drawing um like this kind of environment or this kind of pose or this kind of whatever, but kind of being in a space where like, well, I want to draw this, so I have to draw it to finish this page. Um, you kind of learn like, oh, like anything can be fun to draw if you kind of make it your own, no matter what that is, you know. I like I've been drawing a lot of palm trees in my comic, and I live around a lot of actual palm trees, and I look at the palm trees in real life, and I'm like, I don't draw palm trees like that. I kind of draw this weird version of palm trees that I don't think exists in reality, but it's really fun, and I
So,
could
yeah,
draw
same.
tons of them, you know.
I don't know what it is, but yeah, I love palm trees. There's something
Mhm.
about it that it like feels. I don't know if otherworldly is the right term, but like
No, yeah,
it feels different than what I'm used to, which is, I guess, the standard green tree, bushy green tree. It has like a little more life to it.
yeah.
You have a lot of, and actually, I'll tie it into this next question. How do you get your art to be both so volumetric and so dynamic at the same time?
Um, I guess first of all, thank you. I think that it's like that's just what I like to draw, and a lot of the art I really like is art that shows volume with line, and I don't know why that is. It's just I don't know. I just like how it looks when people do it well. Um, so I think I just like I don't know. It's like how do you do this? It's like I just do it a lot, I guess. And it's the only way I really want to draw. Like I love people who draw in a very like I love like a like that kind of flat style that you see even in like a lot of like old cartoons and stuff. I think it's so like fun. I love those kinds of designs, but
You mean that like UPA?
that's okay. I was trying to
Yeah,
think of that, but I didn't want to sound like an idiot on the podcast.
it's too late.
It's like I'm like, yeah, like the UTI style. That's where my brain was headed.
Oh, I love it.
Like, yeah, stuff like that. That's like very flat. But in terms of stuff I like to draw, it's like, I don't know. I almost like to draw it as if ideally it would be like a CG model that I've outlined almost.
Yeah, I get
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
I can see it.
Um, but
Well,
yeah,
I see a lot of Toriyama influence on your art, and I share the love.
I yeah, we love Toyama in this house.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
And also like all old Capcom, like 90s Capcom
Oh my God,
artwork.
yeah,
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 that's just
really.
I just dive into those things and try to be that.
Yeah, that's really good. Um, well, awesome. Is there anything you wanna plug
Plug.
while you're on the show?
Want a plug?
Yeah.
Oh, you probably get this. I was gonna say, like, go to LDS.org to find out more about the Mormon Church.
This has been one long
Don't-
advertisement. If you want to be like Aaron,
Yeah, if you want to turn your trauma into traumedy, which is
trauma.
comedy trauma, then head on over to Get Baptized Today. Yeah, you don't have to put any of that.
Oh, that's funny though, but
Yeah,
yeah,
you
yeah.
could. Yeah, if you want. I don't know. Uh, I wasn't prepared for a plug.
Well,
Well,
you
what
go
about
to
your
yes, this is
comic?
Aaron on Twitter.
What about Mommy's
Oh,
Miracle Tank?
okay,
Mommy's
sorry,
big
sorry.
butt tank.
Follow me on yes, this is Aaron at twitter.com. Yeah, how do I do this? I have a comic called Mommy's Miracle Tank that you can read on twitter.com
Mommy's
or
dump
at
truck
Mommy's Miracle
ass.
Tank. Mommy's Dump Truck Miracle Dump Truck Tank Dump Ass Tank dot tumblr
Ah,
dot com.
MDTTDDT.
I do have a Tumblr, Mommy's Miracle Tank dot tumblr.com, and I'm working on chapter 3 that I'll hopefully post soon. Um But yeah, sorry. I thought when you said plug, I thought you meant I've heard people plug like other things that they like at the moment, and I
Oh,
couldn't think of
sure.
any. Um,
We don't do that here.
okay.
That's when they're
Uh,
trying to be sneaky and they're like,
yeah,
well, I don't want to talk about myself. I want to talk
yeah.
about, you know.
Yeah.
What goals do you have for the future?
What goals do I have for the future? Biggest one is in terms of like personal projects, I really want to publish a comic. That's
Mhm.
just
Sure.
the dream I'm holding on to. So hopefully in the next couple of years, I really like the idea of doing a Kickstarter. I know it
Hmm.
can be kind of a nightmare
Mm.
too, but I like the
That's
idea
doable.
of kickstarting something.
Would you rather do
Um,
it do it all on your own, like with the funding and everything, or would you also try pitching to a publisher like Penguin or I don't know, I'm trying to think
that's
about
a good question. I don't like, I think I'm open for either. I haven't really like weighed the pros and cons of each yet.
mhm.
Um, yeah, I think if I had something kind of complete or near completion and then could pitch it to a publisher and be like, here's my book, don't change it, but just make it.
Yeah, that's tough.
But
That's tough.
yeah, which is why the self-publishing kind of crowdfunding route sounds fun. Because it keeps with the keeping it how I want it to be. But we'll see. Right now, I'm just having a lot of fun making it.
Mm,
Um,
Sounds great.
yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's the end of this creative block. Aaron, thanks for being our guest and sharing your story.
thank you for having me.
And thanks to your listeners. Follow us on Twitter. It's at Creative Block, creative without the vowels, where we ask for drawing prompts and questions to ask our guests. Huge thanks to our editor Clemens for editing the podcast and Malik for helping us produce the show.
And if you love our show, then support us on Patreon. Becoming a patron gets you early access to interviews as well as bonus episodes. Click the link in the description of this episode. I've been your host, Gene.
And I was V, keeping creative, and we'll see you next week.
Bye bye.
Bye.